Hi, I'm Kylie Roberts.
And I'm Mel Wunwell, and we are Shift Unlimited.
We are both qualified executive coaches, coach supervisors, and trainers of NLP and coaching. The world is a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous place. Every day we wake up to a new surprise. Uncertainty is chronic, instability is permanent, and disruption is common. This is the new normal. The game has changed. It's time to rip up the old rulebook. It's time to define success differently. A shift is happening. The shift is unlimited. We need leaders to live more purposeful lives and to lead more impactful businesses. In this podcast series, we will be doing a deeper dive into many facets of living and leading in this modern world, from founder to scale up, right through to leaders of global established organizations.
We will explore how we can be more holistic and authentic as we connect more deeply with ourselves, our relationships with others, and the wider world. In this podcast series, we'll engage in conversation together on topics that support the modern leader.
We have one wild, precious life to make change for good. And whilst change is daunting, so is staying the same. Let's begin. Welcome to this episode of our podcast. The next few podcast episodes are going to be focused on an area called neurolinguistics. This is a fascinating area of coaching and NLP as it enables us to take deliberate control of our language so that we can accurately predict the impact our words will have on the people we are engaged with. It's a really wonderful way to speak with influence. You can use this understanding of linguistics in every area of your life, in business, in leadership, coaching, at home, with family and friends. Let's begin with the presuppositions of linguistics. These presuppositions of linguistics are very different from the presuppositions of coaching and NLP that we talked about in an earlier episode. The presuppositions of linguistics are the assumptions that underpin English language. So the assumptions that underpin the content of the message that we convey every time we say anything to someone. The structure of our language assumes a number of things, and we can in turn make a number of assumptions from the structure of language someone else talking to us is using. For example, if someone tells us they have to do something versus they're choosing to do something, it helps us to understand which side of the cause and effect equation they are on. If they're choosing to do something, they are at cause. If they have to do it, they're likely to be on the other side.
So why would we want to learn about this as leaders and coaches? Well, when someone is talking to us, we can ascertain the structure of their internal representation, get a real insight into their model of the world. It's hugely important in coaching and leadership. When we're talking to others, it also enables us to structure our presuppositions in our words and use them such that they have a predictable effect on the internal representation or model of the world of the person we're talking to. Remember, whenever we're speaking to someone, we cannot help but change their internal representation with what we say, either in a way that creates a more positive or a less positive state. By learning about linguistic presuppositions, we can be much more choiceful and deliberate about our language and its impact on the people around us. There are 9 presuppositions of linguistics in total. So let's take a look at each one of these in turn.
The first is the presupposition of existence. The presupposition of existence assumes that something exists. So what we're listening for in a sentence is nouns, either regular nouns or pronouns, and every sentence does include them. So if I were to say, you are listening to this podcast, there are 2 presuppositions of existence in that sentence. You, the pronoun, and podcast. Those 2 things exist. Or if I was to say, Kylie and Mel are sharing knowledge on this podcast, again, there are 3 presuppositions of existence there. Kylie, myself, Mel, which are the 2 pronouns, and podcast. Those 3 things exist.
The second presupposition is the presupposition of modal operators of necessity or possibility. We are listening here for verbs and also modal operators. For example, you can learn by listening to these podcasts. This is a presupposition of possibility, the possibility of learning. Or if you want to attend our certified coaching and NLP practitioner program, you must listen to these podcasts a few times. Here, must is a modal operator of necessity. So here we have the possibility of listening to the podcast and also the presupposition of necessity that you must listen to it in order to attend the coaching and NLP practitioner program.
And number 3 is the presupposition of cause and effect. This is a very powerful linguistic presupposition. Here we're assuming the very structure of the sentence, a cause and an effect relationship between one thing and another. We're saying one thing causes something else. So we're listening for words like make, if, X, then Y, because, and while. For example, coaching and leading people with empathy and inclusion will make you a well-respected leader. Or if you empower your people to think for themselves, then your organization will become more agile. The important thing to remember here is that cause and effect don't have to be absolute truth. They just need to be plausible and likely so that people will be open to considering them. And this in turn will have an impact on their internal representation.
Number 4 is the presupposition of complex equivalence. What we're saying here is that two things are equivalent or equated in a sentence. So they're happening simultaneous. We're listening for words like is, are, and means. So if I was to say, listening to these podcasts, you are a future coach, this is a complex equivalent, or taking the time to invest in your personal and professional growth as a leader and coach means you're becoming a really modern and transformational person. This too is a complex equivalent. Sometimes cause and effect and complex equivalents can be confused. The difference is that cause and effect is sequential, by which I mean one thing happens and it causes the next thing to happen, and the other, they're happening simultaneously at the same time.
Presupposition number 5 is the presupposition of awareness. You're listening for any verb that relates to the 5 senses of seeing, hearing, touching, feeling, smelling, tasting. So when we've been saying listening to these podcasts, there is a presupposition of awareness of listening. Or feel the cool breeze on your face. Smelling the freshly cut grass. Feel your body as you move and stretch. These are all presuppositions of awareness.
Number 6 is the presupposition of time. Here we are listening for verb tenses, the past, present, or future. Also words like stop, now, and yet. For instance, if I was to say to you, stop now and go inside, what would you do? For most people, they will stop, they'll clear their minds, and they'll take a moment to go inside and pause or reflect. If someone is going down a really unhelpful track, for example, we can say, well, that's interesting. And just for a moment, stop now. And let's consider some other options that might be more helpful for you. This is a very powerful linguistic structure. And then we have yet. Yet presupposes it hasn't happened yet and that it will or could do. So if someone were to say, I can't do that, you could say, you can't do that yet. And if we were to work together to help understand and improve the practice, you'll find that you're much more able to do this. When we say things like this, we keep people's minds open to the possibility of becoming good at something rather than deciding they just can't do it. When they do that, they just won't give things a go, and this can limit their potential.
Number 7 is adjectives and adverbs. So here we're listening for words that add detail to nouns and verbs in sentences. For instance, you're learning about coaching in NLP very quickly. The quickly gives us more detail about the verb learning. Or looking at the incredible sun at sunset. The adjective incredible gives us more detail about the sun.
Then we have number 8, the presupposition of the inclusive or exclusive or. Here we're listening for or in a sentence. With an exclusive or, we have the perception of choice, but it isn't really there. It's what's called a double bind. An example of this would be, would you like to pay by cash or card? There's no real choice. We still have to pay. Will you do that now or later? Again, we still have to do it. There isn't really a choice, but there appears to be one. With the inclusive or, there is a choice because it includes other options. So, for example, would you like to practice yoga for 45 minutes or go for a run? Or would you like to eat salad or pasta? There really is a choice with these particular options. The words only and just can presuppose exclusivity. For example, only listen to our podcasts or just listen to this podcast for now.
And then finally, number 9, we have the presupposition of ordinal. With the presupposition of ordinal, we're listening for orders, lists, numbers, orders, and sequences. Words like firstly, finally. So when we say first, second, third, fourth, fifth, next, last, finally, previously, they are all presuppositions of an order, presuppositions of ordinal. These are examples of how we and other people are using presuppositions in our language each and every day. For the majority of us, this is a completely unconscious process. We haven't thought about it since we were in school learning about English language back then. We don't even really consciously think about, I am a cause or effect. Am I in creating choice or inclusivity or exclusivity? This all happens unconsciously. We're bringing it to the conscious mind in this episode because it's an important skill to develop, what is actually presupposed in a sentence versus what you might be mind reading in a sentence. This is why using sensory acuity and the right principles of reflection, inquiry, disruption, and experimentation are really important as we develop ourselves as coaches and leaders. When we become more conscious and aware of the structure of language, we can become so much more choiceful and elegant in the words that we choose to say. This, in turn, creates images and internal representations in other people's minds. This is a super valuable leadership tool, empowering others around us versus disabling them with the words that we're saying and how we structure our sentences. Have a lot of fun playing with this. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this first exploration of neurolinguistics, and we look forward to sharing much more around neurolinguistics in episodes that follow. See you soon.
So thank you for listening today. Please do click to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Instagram at shift_unlimited.